The protagonists of this story, the Martinez family, seemed, at first glance, the epitome of happiness. Comprised of Roberto, a charismatic 40-year-old father and warm art lover, Clara, a 38-year-old mother who always showed her unconditional support, and their three biological children, Mateo, Ana and Lucas. The family lived in a quiet two-story house in a California suburb. Daily life was filled with laughter, school activities, and the responsibilities of any home. In 2015, after years of discussions and considerations about the possibility of adoption, Roberto and Clara decided to expand their family in a way they believed would enrich them, adopting a girl. That is how they met Valentina, a girl who had been through multiple adoptive homes and who, at 6 years old, longed for a family that would love and protect her. Clara's excited and hopeful gaze contrasted with the deep and thoughtful gaze of Roberto, who felt an impulse that went beyond simple parenthood. From the first day Valentina arrived home, the atmosphere was filled with a mix of joy and a strange vulnerability. Clara vividly remembered the day they met her at the adoption center. Valentina, with her curly hair and big brown eyes, shone with excitement. "Will I have a home?" she asked in a trembling voice. That moment haunted Roberto like an echo in his consciousness. Roberto found in Valentina a spark of joy that had been absent in his life. That instant connection, however, soon transformed into something more complex. As the days passed, Clara began to notice a change in the family dynamic. Roberto, although always attentive to his biological children, seemed to become obsessed with Valentina, devoting time and attention to her that limited his interaction with the rest of the family. The afternoons they spent together took on an air of ritual, where only they seemed to share a special complicity. Clara remembered how, on a spring afternoon in 2016, Roberto and Valentina spent hours in the garden workshop, where he taught her to paint. Clara, from the kitchen, watched with a mixture of admiration and growing discomfort. Why doesn't he spend time with the others? She often asked herself. One particular moment stuck in her memory. It was a sunny day, and Roberto had taken Valentina to a local park. He had organized a treasure hunt of sorts, just for her. Mateo and Ana hung back, frustrated, while their father and Valentina laughed and played in the grass as if they didn't exist. "And us?" Mateo asked once, his voice full of disappointment. Clara tried to calm her children, trying to explain that Valentina was new to the family and needed extra attention. However, the passage of time only intensified the problem. While at first Clara thought Roberto's devotion was simply affectionate fatherly behavior, the nature of his obsession soon became more obvious and disturbing. She realized that Roberto's admiration for Valentina was beginning to cross boundaries that should not be overstepped. As a mother, Clara worried about the emotional health of her biological children and tried to balance the attention they all needed. However, every time she tried to talk to Roberto about his behavior, he dismissed her concerns. "I'm just looking out for her, Clara. She needs a father," he would repeat, his voice laden with a defensive confidence that made Clara feel increasingly helpless. The explosion of the situation came through Valentina herself. In November 2017, during Thanksgiving dinner, Valentina accidentally let slip a comment that chilled Clara's blood. Telling Mateo about her day, the little girl said, "Dad told me that I'm his favorite. Sometimes, he lets me sleep in his bed when Mommy's not home." Valentina's words echoed around the table like a wake-up call. Clara felt the air escape from her lungs. She looked at Roberto, who, numb, tried to laugh at Valentina's words, and the laughter turned into an awkward silence. No one at the table dared to continue the conversation. But there was still time for things to get much worse. As 2018 progressed, Roberto's behavior became more erratic. Not only was he overly protective of Valentina, but at times he also became possessive, preventing his other children from getting close to her. Jealousy between the siblings began to increase, and family tensions grew, leading to constant arguments. Clara, feeling trapped, tried to mediate the conflict, but the atmosphere in their home became unsustainable. The days became a constant emotional struggle. The seemingly perfect relationship she had dreamed of building was falling apart. Clara began to have doubts about her love for Valentina, wondering if she had done the right thing by adopting. Valentina's childhood, so marked by trauma and abandonment, was a factor that weighed heavily on her heart. However, Roberto's behavior kept her on edge. There were times when Roberto remained distant with his biological children, and Clara could only watch as the friendship between her adopted daughter and her husband grew at the expense of her other children. In this context, Clara found herself completely isolated. She spent hours researching adoption and childhood trauma, searching for answers to the confusion that enveloped her. She felt helpless, although her love and commitment as a mother never faded. She knew that Valentina deserved special treatment, but she felt that Roberto's approach had gotten out of control. By the end of 2018, tensions had reached a critical point. The day after Christmas, Clara decided to confront Roberto about her fears. Over a cold leftover dinner, with the sound of the sink as the only background music, Clara gathered the courage to raise her concerns. "Roberto, I'm worried about Valentina. I feel like you're too attached to her," she said, her voice shaking. Roberto looked at her, and though his eyes showed surprise, a shadow of irritation crept across his face. "I'm just being a good father. She needs the love she wasn't given," he replied defensively. Clara felt frightened as she watched her husband dismiss her, her heart filling with growing fear about Valentina's future. The next few days only intensified her anxiety. Clara survived in a world of fear and denial, trying to remember the happy times they had shared as a family. Struggling with a growing worry, but unable to do anything but watch as Roberto and Valentina's relationship became more and more disturbing. As Roberto's obsession turned into a need to control Valentina, the atmosphere at home became increasingly tense. The mother was often faced with troubling questions, such as, "Will I be able to protect my children? How can I save Valentina from this situation?" The Martinez family story continued to spiral into a mix of love and deviant love, where Valentina's sweet face hid a truth that was yet to be revealed. From the heart of their home in California, each member of the family navigated their own torment, unaware that tragedy lurked in the darkness, waiting to reveal itself. The atmosphere in the Martinez household continued to deteriorate. Roberto's obsession with Valentina, which had begun as a paternal love, had become a dark shadow that loomed over every corner of the home. Clara, consumed by her anxiety, was torn between the hope that it was all a misinterpretation on her part and the fear that, indeed, the nature of the relationship between her husband and Valentina had crossed unforgivable limits. The days dragged on, filled with moments that seemed to drag on forever. Following Valentina's disturbing revelation about the secret and possible abuse, Clara found herself in an emotional turmoil, battling confusion and fear. Her determination to protect Valentina grew stronger each day, while her trust in Roberto crumbled like a house of cards. During those weeks, Clara made a conscious effort to observe her husband and Valentina as they interacted. Every shared laugh, every knowing glance, felt like a stab. She had begun to doubt her own judgment. Uncertainty plagued her. "Is there really something wrong with what is happening, or is it just my paranoia?" she thought on multiple occasions. The therapist's voice, however, echoed in her mind. "It is crucial that Valentina feels that this is a safe space." Clara knew she had to act. As a protective mother, Clara decided to take Valentina to a therapist on a regular basis. She figured that this way her daughter could discuss her fears and secrets in a controlled and safe environment. Still, that wasn't enough. Clara needed to speed up her investigation into Roberto's unusual behavior. However, she felt helpless because, with each passing day, her instincts told her that each moment Valentina spent in her father's company brought her closer to the precipice. Valentina's first regular therapy session took place on December 26, 2019, just after Christmas. Clara had been very anxious, feeling that it would be a defining moment for her daughter. She wished Valentina would feel comfortable enough to talk about the secrets that kept her caged in fear. The therapist, Doris, was a caring and professional woman, with years of experience in helping children who had been through difficult experiences. In her consultation, Clara hoped Valentina would find the strength to open up. Doris had created a welcoming atmosphere. The room was decorated with warm colors and toys that helped the children relax. Valentina, shy and scared, sat in a corner of the sofa, playing with the ends of her sweater. Clara sat next to her, trying to give her encouragement and support. As they talked, Valentina felt more secure. After some initial questions about her day, they began to talk about her feelings. The session was tense. Valentina's answers were monosyllable and halting, but under Doris's patient guidance, little by little, the girl began to open up. It was then, with the shadow of her trauma looming over everything, that Clara saw the first hint of relief on her daughter's face. "Sometimes, Dad tells me that what we do is a secret. He tells me that I should only tell him," Valentina murmured, her small voice breaking with the weight of the confession. Clara felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Valentina's words rang with overwhelming clarity. The therapist nodded, letting Clara know that this was not the first time she had heard stories like this, but each time it happened it was equally heartbreaking. After the session, Doris took a moment to speak with Clara separately. "Clara, I think it's important that we consider the possibility that Valentina is experiencing an abusive situation. I would like to suggest that you consider speaking to the authorities. They cannot underestimate the severity of what your daughter has shared," she said firmly. Clara felt a surge of panic, but at the same time, a fierce determination began to rise within her. She had spent days feeling helpless and scared, but now, the idea of taking action, of protecting Valentina, gave her new strength. After all, if everything Valentina had told her was true, she couldn't let a monster hide behind a facade of fatherly love. They returned home in a heavy silence. Valentina seemed a little calmer, but Clara could tell that her daughter was battling inner demons in her little heart. They spent the night free of words, with Clara trying to figure out the best way to approach the gathering storm. She knew she should talk to the authorities, but the thought of facing Roberto was terrifying. He was the father of her children, her life partner, the man she had loved deeply. However, what she had seen and heard had worn away that love, and it could no longer be ignored. The next morning, Clara was ready to act. Remembering Doris's words, each step toward the phone felt like a giant leap toward doing the right thing. With shaking hands, she dialed the number for child services. "How can I help you?" the operator asked, and Clara, with renewed strength, began to explain the situation. The sound of her own voice over the phone made her feel vulnerable, but also empowered. The operator listened intently and asked her to send an officer to her home to review the situation. She understood that she needed to take the next step with precision and courage. Talking to the police was a risk, but it was also an opportunity to protect Valentina from a dangerous situation. As Clara waited for the authorities to arrive, her mind struggled with doubts. How would she dare face Roberto when she knew the reason for the police visit? The shadow of fear whispered in her ear, "You'll ruin everything. You'll regret it." However, the memory of Valentina's frightened face and her own words remained defiant in her mind. She knew she couldn't give up. When the officer finally arrived, Clara felt a little calmer. He was a middle-aged man, with a professional and kind approach. After introducing himself and listening to Clara's concerns, he began the process of assessing the home. He mostly questioned the other 3 children, who, not understanding the gravity of the situation, answered his questions in a nonchalant manner, ignoring the dramatic tension developing in the environment. After speaking to the children, the officer asked to speak to Valentina. Clara felt a knot in her stomach. "This is just a precaution," she told herself, hoping the words would ease her fear. She couldn't stop thinking that it was now her responsibility to end this cycle of abuse and secrets. Valentina, who had been watching from the corner of the room, approached the officer. Clara saw her insecurity, and her heart broke as she remembered how fragile her life was. The officer spoke to her softly, asking questions about her experience at home and her relationship with her father. Clara preferred to stay out of the way, watching as her daughter struggled to find words. Valentina's answers were nervous and hesitant, and every now and then the girl looked to her mother for comfort. When the conversation ended, the officer sat down with Clara again. "I understand that this is difficult, but it is crucial that we work diligently. If there is a problem at home, we must address it immediately. Sometimes things that seem like nothing serious can turn out to be much more serious," he explained. Clara felt her heart tighten. She could only wait and hope for the right decision to rescue Valentina. After the interviews were over, the officer left, but not before leaving Clara with his contact card. "If you see anything unusual or have any further concerns, please call me. Your daughter's safety is the most important thing," he told her before saying goodbye. The house was silent when she left. The weight of the officer's words echoed in the corners of her mind. Clara didn't know how long it would be until the courts decided whether there was enough evidence to launch an investigation. The weight ate at her. Every minute felt like a year. Still, she had made up her mind. She had set out, and they weren't going to stop. As the days passed, Clara offered unconditional support to Valentina, making sure the little girl felt safe. They had talks to help Valentina deal with her fears, and every word of love and understanding helped heal the wound that had opened in her little soul. The tremendous weight that had been on Clara was slowly fading away. However, Roberto was still a presence in the house, and every time he approached Valentina, Clara felt the energy around him change. Her husband seemed more anxious, increasingly asking about the children singing and continually seeking to hug Valentina. Although Clara tried to remain calm, Every time they saw her daughter smile, she felt torn with fear. The crust of paternal love she had once seen had cracked, leaving a chasm in her heart. It was December 31st, 2019, and the whole family was getting ready for New Year's Eve. The kids were excited about the fireworks and the treats. Clara focused on keeping the celebration going, even though her mind couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the new year began. While the kids were playing, Clara found herself alone with Roberto in the kitchen. "What if I tell you a secret?" Roberto said, trying to keep his tone playful, as if he were trying to recapture the spark that had been lost between them. Clara felt her skin crawl. "Of course," she replied, trying to keep her composure. "I think I'm starting to understand Valentina. Sometimes things are much more complicated than they seem. Clara, you have to take care of her, nurture her like a flower that needs attention," he explained, as he watched his daughter play in the distance. "She's made of light, darling." Roberto's words echoed in the air, but Clara felt the darkness lurking and intensifying. "I don't understand, Roberto," she finally said, her voice cracking, her fear evident in the form of words. "I don't know if that light is really needed in a way that resonates in this home. The attention you give it is hurting others, and more importantly, Valentina." Roberto's face hardened. "What are you implying? You have no idea what you're talking about. She needs love and support, Clara. She's hurt." Clara felt her words go through her and the air became increasingly thick. She was at a crossroads. Either she continued on this path of disillusionment that could end in battle, or she decided to protect her daughter, even if that meant losing her husband. Just as they were both breaking down, the children appeared in the kitchen, happy and carefree. Clara took a deep breath, keeping calm to protect her family from the storm that was brewing. "Let's celebrate as a family, okay?" she suggested in an attempt to ease the tension. That night, as the lights twinkled and the clock counted down to the new year, Clara watched her children, and Valentina in particular. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, but there was a shadow behind those blinking brown eyes that made Clara increasingly worried. She knew that the situation could not be prolonged. The night ended without incident, but Clara felt that even though the calendar changed, the fight that was taking place in her home was not over. The following week, Clara and Valentina had their second appointment with Doris. Valentina's insecurities had gradually disappeared, so when it was time to speak privately with a therapist, her mother felt that something good was about to happen. During the session, Valentina finally felt confident enough to speak without hesitation. As they began to chat, she began to let out the words as if she were releasing a great weight from her heart. "Dad tells me I'm special, that I shouldn't tell Mom everything we do together," Valentina confessed, her voice clear but laden with sadness. "He tells me that sometimes I can do things that are just for us," she continued, and Clara's face turned chalk white, feeling each word like a heartbreaking revelation. The pieces were starting to come together. The therapist, after listening to Valentina, tried to guide the conversation in a more constructive direction. Clara absorbed in the pain. Clara's face turned pale as she listened to Valentina. It was obvious that her little girl had been carrying an unbearable weight. The therapist, Doris, encouraged Valentina to continue sharing. "Is there anything else you want to share about what Daddy is telling you?" she asked. Valentina looked down, struggling to find the words. Clara, with a lump in her throat, said, "It's okay, honey. You can tell me what you feel. I'm here with you." Finally, Valentina whispered, "Sometimes I feel like there are things I shouldn't do, but I don't know if they're bad." Her daughter's words pierced Clara's heart, and she realized she couldn't ignore this painful truth. Doris, observing the tension, suggested, "Clara, it is crucial that Valentina expresses her feelings. She needs a safe environment." Clara understood that she had to act. After the session, she hugged Valentina and promised her that she would always be by her side, that she would never be alone. The connection between mother and daughter was strengthened in that instant. Back home, Clara felt determined. She began researching resources and support organizations. She joined a group of mothers who shared heartbreaking and encouraging stories. Each testimony gave her strength, reaffirming that she was not alone in this fight. On the first day of February 2020, Clara decided it was time to have a serious talk with Roberto. With her heart pounding, she confronted him. "Valentina has been talking to her therapist and has shared things about your relationship with her," Clara began. Roberto, upon hearing the accusation, became defensive. "That's not true. I'm a good father and you're just letting your insecurities get the better of you," he retorted. "Roberto, This isn't about me. It's about Valentina. She's uncomfortable with certain things and has mentioned that you asked her to keep secrets, Clara replied, sensing the tension escalating. I can't let this continue. We need help, and if you're not willing to seek it, I need to consider other options for her safety, she concluded. The argument became intense, but Clara stood firm. After weeks of conflict and tension, she decided that if Roberto would not agree to seek help, she could not turn her back on her daughter's safety. Through her support network, Clara made the difficult decision to begin the process of separation. The legal process was painful, but each hearing reaffirmed their decision. Roberto presented his side as the heartbroken father, while Clara staunchly defended Valentina's safety. In March 2020, the final hearing was held. Clara explained her situation and the judge, after deliberation, awarded primary custody to Clara, with limited access for Roberto. Relief washed over Clara upon hearing the decision. Her fight had been worth it. The next few months were not easy, but Clara focused on rebuilding trust in her home. Together, they engaged in family activities that strengthened their bond. Valentina, along with her siblings, began to thrive in the nurturing environment Clara had created. As time passed, Clara watched as Valentina grew more confident and learned to express her emotions. Though the scars of the past might linger, they were on a path to healing. Together, Clara and her children embraced a new life, filled with love and hope. Clara could finally smile and remember that her bravery had created a haven where love would always be paramount.